about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reign Over Me, the Atlanta Reign podcast. As always, I am Shy Guy, and I'm joined by Norcetto to break down all things Atlanta Reign. We've got a lot to talk about here today, buddy.
I'm just sitting here smugly about my last prediction that I got called out by everyone for. Thank you.
I'm gonna stand by calling you out on that prediction.
That's fair.
Just because it turned out well for you. I don't think that makes it a smart choice, but in this case, you get to gloat. You get to lord it over me. And of course, we are talking about the fact that a couple weeks ago now, since we were off last week during the Dallas homestand when Atlanta didn't play. We're talking about, of course, Atlanta getting probably the biggest upset of this Overwatch League season in being the first team to take down NYXL, at least in the regular season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't just that New York's perfect season was ruined. Their regular season, obviously, they choked in the Stage 1 playoffs. But the fact that Atlanta was the one to do it, because nobody saw that coming.
Absolutely no one. I mean, I saw people like laughing. I mean, to be fair, I was kind of laughing at you for making the prediction. Everyone was making jokes about, if Atlanta could even compete with NYXL. And then they kind of came out and, to be totally honest, stomped them. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Right now, we've got some more recent events to talk about. And that is, of course, the goings on in North American contenders with the Atlanta Academy team.
Oh yeah, it's been we finally got through the first season of the 2019 contenders, and this is actually the second season for ATL Academy, and not only we had made the finals in both of our seasons, which is huge in its own regards. So that's something that for a new organization now, ATL Academy was built out of a lot of the last night's leftovers people as well, and we've had a very good first season showing, but we had a little bit of a rough start this season. So I'm really happy to see that we held out and pulled out really strong in the end.
Sure. I mean, and I think a lot of that could be chalked up to the fact that the team was playing without a flex support for about half of the season. Pretty much as soon as they got Bird signed and into the roster, things kind of immediately flipped 180 and they started going in the right direction again. So his inclusion in the team has been massive for them. And I think is a huge part of why they were able to eventually, just yesterday, as of this recording, end up in the runner-up spot in the NA West, I believe was their region. I can never remember which one's East or West.
Strangely, we're in NA West, which it just weird, but we didn't have to face Fusion Uni, which they ended up losing to Envy, so they're not even in the running here.
Well, no, they won NA East. Fusion Uni won NA East. We lost to Envy.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting very. They lost to Legion. That's what it was.
No, they beat Legion. They won their division.
Wait, what am I thinking? Who did they lose to? They lost to someone.
They have not lost.
They lost to someone.
Oh wait, no, they lost someone in the regular season. I forget.
Yeah, they lost to someone. That's what it is. I am wrong on my information. I'll give you that. But they definitely lost to someone because
you're right.
They're like 30 game winning streak came to
That's
an
true.
end, which
I forgot about that. There was this crazy week of contenders where they lost. And then Runaway lost later in the week. So, the two crazy contenders win streaks both went down. I'm looking at it now. Who the heck did they lose to?
Who did they lose to? They
lost to Mayhem Academy.
Academy, that's what it was. And that Mayhem Academy is say what you will about the Mayhem OWL squad. Mayhem Academy is insane.
Yeah, they were a really fun team to watch all season. But we are not here to talk about Mayhem Academy or any of the goings on really in the NA East region. We're here to talk about Atlanta and everything affiliated with it. So, yesterday we got to see Atlanta go up against Envy in the NA West title match, and that was a heck of a game.
Man, yeah, it was didn't turn out great for the boys from Atlanta, but it was hard fought. Envy has been a dominant force all season. They are the only undefeated team at this point.
Yeah, in NA at least they are the only team that made it through unscathed. They like were barely ever tested at all during the regular season. And had a pretty clean run through the playoffs. I mean, a 3-0 in the semis and then beating Atlanta yesterday 4-1, even though that scoreline is deceptive there. This was a much closer game than the score would suggest.
For sure. Most people were calling 4-0. Most people were calling that they were just walk in and dominate everyone, including ATL. And the fact that we took a map was big, but even the ones that we lost, it was honestly, I think Atlanta had the tools to win that. That there was a lot of just mistakes, just ults popped at the wrong time, just poor discipline in some sections. And against certain teams we have the skill and talent to overcome that, but up against a team like Envy, those little mistakes were punished hard, and there's really nothing we could do to come back from a lot of those fights.
Yeah, exactly. I think Atlanta in general, the academy team at least, plays this really kind of I want to say like clutch heavy style where they feel like they can win basically every single fight. Even when they are down, they will commit ultimates and they will try to turn things around. And a lot of times it works. A lot of times it produces incredible results. They were able to do it in the semifinals against Meta Skyfoxes to punch their ticket into the finals. But going up against Envy, they're just such a strong team from top to bottom. Superstar talent across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was that's how this whole thing started in the last few days. So we ran through first round in the quarterfinals. We faced off against XL2 Academy, which a good team, but we showed up for that game. 3-0'd XL2 Academy, looked great. And then went up against the Meta Skyfoxes, the newly rebranded Meta Skyfoxes. And Meta Skyfoxes, they had a really rough season last year, but this season came out really strong and have looked great all season. This was a real test for the academy team, and we had to take it to a map 5, and that was after tying one as well,
yeah.
right?
We had to take it to a map 6 actually.
Yeah, map 6
at the end, because they tied the assault map. It was Volskaya, so ended up going to a map 6. So Atlanta had to pull off. They played 2 straight control maps to close out the series, and Atlanta won both of them to pull off what was an upset, at least in terms of like the seedings going into this.
Right.
And then get to go up against Envy in the finals. So a really great run at the end of the day for Atlanta Academy, and it wasn't quite done after that loss to Envy.
No, after a best of or first of 4 series against Envy, that was NA West. They then had the NA East finals between Fusion Uni and Gladiators Legion, which Fusion Uni did win. Yeah, and so we got to face off against in the losers bracket up against Legion later on in the day. Which that was to the number 1 teams in both of the NA regions are going to land in Berlin, which is huge. That's all of the different contenders regions around the globe are going to be meeting up for the first time. This is something new this year, to really compete and see who is the top out of all of the different regions, but not just the winners. One of the person in 3rd place, the winner of the losers bracket, would get to go, and we were able to not just pull it out. We looked real good against Gladiators.
Yeah, so this was a really strange situation, at least from the outside looking in, and something that I didn't even realize until yesterday was actually happening. I knew that this game was going to happen. I knew that it had to happen at some point, but until yesterday, I didn't realize it was happening immediately after the finals were concluded. The Gladiators Legion literally had to do like a 20-minute turnaround between losing to Fusion Uni and then immediately having to go back into game to play against Atlanta. So honestly, if I'm being real for a second, it's a really unfortunate situation for them. That's not the kind of like competitive environment that you really want to see for a game that has stakes like this. Sure, it's not playing for a title, but going to a LAN is huge. Going into the only opportunity either of these teams are going to have for a LAN this year is huge. And, Atlanta got a little bit lucky with the way things shook out. But in the end of the day, they look like the stronger team for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I will point out, I think you're right that it was more unfortunate for Gladiators because they had to immediately transition into a second game. But I don't think it was fair for either team. Like, I mean, even ATL had to play, get warmed up, and then spend a couple hours just sitting there waiting to see who they'd get to face, and then after cooling back down, they had to warm back up. Like it's just. Like you said, it's not something that these teams should really have to be dealing with on either side. I think it worked out better for us, but just in general, I think it has to do with the fact that trials start next week. So if there's going to be any roster swaps for anyone who loses or anything like that, maybe that will need to happen in the next week. And OWL starts back tonight, so they couldn't push it to tonight. They can't have Contenders playing on top of OWL. No, they.
Yeah, I would have liked to see them just push it to maybe playing right now where we're talking. It's about 3 in the afternoon. I feel like they easily could have pushed that game to today and made something happen so that these teams had time to prepare, because it is just a little, in my mind, kind of antithetical to the way Contenders has been run the entire season, where you're playing one game a week. You have one game that you are preparing for a single opponent, and you get to focus in on that. And playoffs in general are on a much condensed kind of time frame, but to have basically no chance to prepare for the team you're going up against is not what I would like to see, because I can't imagine either Atlanta or Gladiators were really doing a lot of scouting for the other region. They were both focused on their championship match.
Exactly. Like you have to get through your own region. I mean, they had to play a game after game after game to get through the final or the playoffs, but these are teams that they played before during the regular season. Gladiators, they didn't know they were going to be playing Gladiators. There's no way to prepare for that. So you just have to practice your own game. And like you said, I would have much rather seen them be able to prepare. But at the end of the day, I think that ATL did look stronger, and a lot of these teams do kind of are on record saying, we practice more our own style than trying to counter another person's style. So I don't know. It's unfortunate that it shook out the way it did, but it's not unfortunate that we are going to LAN. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. So that is going to be happening in a couple of months. I forget exactly what is the dates for this. It happens it's actually a month from right now, right at the very end of May, early June is when the Atlantic showdown at least happens. So should be a huge opportunity for Atlanta. They got a month to prepare for this, to kind of redeem themselves, because of course Envy will still be there. Fusion Uni will be there as well, so a chance to kind of avenge both of their finals losses from the past 2 seasons.
Oh yeah, and not just that, we have EU contenders, so we got the British Hurricane and Angry Titans coming in as well. And has South America happened yet? I know someone from South America.
They have not played their finals yet, so the winner of South America contenders will make their way to the finals as well. Most likely, from what I know about the region, there's a Brazilian team that has kind of been dominating the region for a long time called Loki Esports. That should be the presumptive favorite to make it to that land, but that will shake out, I think, later this week. So we'll know the full details pretty soon. But it's going to be a really fun event. I'm incredibly happy that they have kind of brought lands back into the tier 2 scene to give these players an opportunity to show off on land, to show off at the best of their abilities. And I'm incredibly excited for it.
Yeah, me too. And that's just really awesome for the Contenders players and stuff. It's bad that they took away lands. I know a lot of people are unhappy about that. But to have one at the end and be able to actually combine regions, that's something I'm really excited about, because we finally get to answer the question, NA versus EU.
For sure. And it'll be very interesting to see there's an opportunity for Atlanta to have a chance, I think, to make it to. There is a kind of end of season land which will literally be global. That they're calling it the Gauntlet. So if Atlanta can perform well at the Atlantic Showdown, they have a chance to make it there for the end of season one as well. But that's a long time away. But they've got a month to get ready for this event, and it's gonna be exciting to get to go across the pond and see how they stack up with some other regions.
For sure, and I wanted to point something out that this is some insider info, I guess. Some juice, yeah, bringing the juice. So, British Hurricane is one of the people we're going to be going up against, and they are insanely good. They are a very, very good team. A lot of people have said that the Hurricane could beat Runaway. A lot of people are saying that they're going to win and go all the way. I have heard word that ATL Academy is one of the scrim partners of British Hurricane, and I have heard that ATL Academy is one of the only teams who has actually been able to give British Hurricane a run for their money. So, say what you will about the juice, but I can say it's from a very reputable source, and I really hope to face off, and I hope that comes out to be true, because scrim bucks, what happens in scrims doesn't matter. It's what happens on stage, but it's interesting information to have.
For sure, and that's a good sign for Atlanta, at least going into this. That could give them some confidence, knowing that they can stand up to one of the best tier 2 teams in the world right now. So they have got to be feeling good at this point about their chances, and they will be motivated for sure going into that event. But that is enough talk about Contenders. So let's get to the main event. And we discussed it a little bit earlier, but a couple weeks ago, Atlanta Reign had one of the probably the most bizarre weeks of Overwatch League action that has ever occurred. First knocking off NYXL 3-1, and then immediately, falling to the Guangzhou charge right after it.
And this is coming the week after we gave Valiant their very first one of the season?
Yes.
Very first win of the season to the number 20 team, and then we come back and beat arguably the best team in the league. I would say second best. I'd say third best before this game. You'd probably definitely say third best.
I would.
As a Vancouver fan, but and I'd agree with you there. But yeah, so we went from giving the number 20 team their first win to coming back and beating arguably one of the top teams, or definitely one of the top teams, and then crashing and burning to another low-rated team on Sunday. So it was crazy. It's a roller coaster of emotion for sure.
It is at the same time both kind of completely inexplicable, just if you are looking at it from like a macro perspective, the quality of the two teams that Atlanta played against, but at the same time it is like imminently explainable if you know this Atlanta team and their strengths and weaknesses, as well as the teams they were going up against. So we've talked about it all year long, and it's something that this week I think really crystallized for a lot of people, that Atlanta is actually a very solid team when they have a plan, when they know what they're doing, when everything is straightforward and going according to plan. But then when things kind of get off the beaten path, when they get a curveball thrown at them, they seem to struggle to adapt. And that played out exactly as you would expect against these two teams.
Yeah, for sure. And versus, we can go ahead and jump in. Against New York, it was a really interesting matchup, because it's not like Atlanta did anything extraordinary. They just outplayed New York on very basic compositions. New York has been known, is a lot of GOATs that was played, and New York has been known about being passive here and defensive there, and Atlanta knew what to look for and knew when to press and it was unreal. It was looking like New York was a lower tier team, not because they were necessarily playing terribly, but because Atlanta knew where to be and where they were going to be. And not to mention Dogman with some insane shots onto Dogman won the first map for them
Pretty
off
much.
of some of his
I mean,
picks.
yeah. He did it on, I mean, they won both of the maps on Busan of all maps, which has been the bane of Atlanta's existence. They won both of the two stages on Busan because Dogman got massive pickoffs to start final, like the last fight of the round. The first time onto Jonak, and then I believe onto Onamo to get the second one, and just completely kind of neutered NYXL a couple of times.
Yeah, it was unreal to watch. And now, and yeah, it was mostly just the standard 3-3 goats comp. And actually, I wanted to jump in, interject real quick. I actually talked to someone who's been listening to some of our episodes, and they're somewhat new to the game, and was a little bit confused about what that meant. So I wanted to touch on what goats was real quick. I know a lot of people do know, but goats is a composition that developed from a team, a Contenders team. Were they open division at the time?
They were open division at the time, so it was a tier 3 team who came up with the composition. They were called, the team name was Goats, hence the name of the composition that they came up with.
Yeah, and it was it basically they realized that if you just stay in a little ball and you have a ton of health and a ton of regen, you can do a ton of damage, and there's not much people can really do. They can't get close to you without dying. So they adapted to having, instead of 2 tanks, 2 DPS, and 2 support players, they just had 3 tanks and 3 supports, including Lucio, so they can go faster, and Diva, so they can, eat some of the damage of the defense matrix and stop some of that coming in. But basically, people found out that the only thing that really works against this 3-3 composition was more goats. So it's something that Blizzard has actually been battling, trying to make it more diverse, because what you want is a rock, paper, scissors situation, and we're kind of almost there. So you have like goats is a very close range composition. So the way you beat goats is with long range damage, where they can't really do anything and it scatters them out. The way you beat long range damage is a dive composition that jumps on them, and the way you beat dive is goats. But the problem is goats is so much stronger to dive than anything else that any other combination, that after a round or two, both teams just settle on going goats versus goats. So it's something that people have gotten really bored with, and it's a little bit of a problem. People are calling for locking in 2-2-2, but that's the basics behind goats. It's a very defensive composition that relies on regenerative health and defensive cooldowns and staying very tight and very close, very mechanically intensive, and it's something Blizzard has tried to nerf, healing and shields and things like that to deal with, and it's starting to work. We're starting to see some new comps, but yeah, that is what goats is. But getting back to this game, it was just both teams kind of playing a lot of that 3-3 comp, and Atlanta just was able to find picks that other teams haven't been able to find.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it came down to the fact that Atlanta is very comfortable when they can get in that mirror matchup, when they know what is in front of them, when they know what they're dealing with, and that's exactly what you've got with NYXL. And then the other thing that I think kind of lent itself to this game in particular going Atlanta's way is New York's a very passive team when they play goats. Yeah. Much more so than a lot of the other top teams. If you think about like Vancouver or San Francisco, they are just like right up in your face. They are going to jam their goats down your throat. And New York plays
just chasing bumpers. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a completely different style for most of the teams that are playing goats at a high level. But New York plays it very, very slow, which I think for Atlanta, they have a hard time kind of adapting in the moment. And when everything is going slowly, I think it kind of works very well for them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and that's something that but that's why we're able to. Something that I've said repeatedly about New York is they're a very consistent team. Vancouver has these super big highs and lows and stuff like that, where well, they've mostly been highs, but it's because they're able to make up for when mistakes are made. They're just such talented players that it doesn't matter. New York has just been consistent, and teams have been, and that's been through season 1 and season 2, and teams are starting to kind of figure out what that consistency is and how to deal with it. And I think Atlanta knew they had their number. They knew exactly what they were going to do. And like you said, when a team is playing passive and Atlanta can kind of take a slow, steady approach to moving in and executing their goats play, they're hard to beat. And I think New York learned that pretty hard.
Yeah, and Atlanta did one other thing really well here, which was kind of balance between that aggressive style and that passive style over the course of the game whenever it was needed. Because I mean, you can think back to a case like on Kings Row, where they were basically spawn camping NYXL for a time on point B. They pushed all the way up towards spawn, took a ton of time off NYXL's clock. So, getting aggressive at the right moments was key in this series. And overall, it just seemed to catch NYXL off guard. I think they probably expected coming to this game to roll Atlanta easily and didn't really give it a second thought. But they were just not quite ready for what Atlanta brought to the table.
I think one of the biggest things is that, like, New York is generally, to a lot of people, a very scary team, and Atlanta didn't show fear. They didn't show, they knew they could outplay them, and when they saw an opportunity, they executed on it. They weren't like, we need to watch out for this, we need to watch out for this. They were like, no, we know this is right, let's do it. And like, if you look at what some of the teams said, they were like, no, we knew we were going to beat New York. And whether or not that's true, whether or not they had doubts, doesn't really matter. It's the fact that they were so confident. They had the confidence to execute on those plays, and I think that's something that a lot of teams are going to see. That New York can bleed, and if you can actually pressure them and not be afraid of Jonak, then you can move in and take them down. And it was unreal to watch. It was unreal to watch. It was something that I had so for those who don't know, I had a bet with another host of a podcast to eat some super spicy wings, whoever lost, and say wonderful things about the opposing team. And I was getting ready, man. I had confidence in the team, but the stats were against me. So I had to be ready, and I just got more and more excited. Me and Modelo were exchanging messages, and he was not happy with New York's plot armor.
No, definitely not after this week. So I hope he enjoyed his wings, and I hope you enjoyed winning that bet, because that was so satisfying for an Atlanta team that has had a very rough go in stage 2. We've talked about it a ton here, so we don't need to get too deep into it. But
there's something else we do need to talk about, though, that we haven't touched on and is very, very important to this matchup, and that is the Daco situation.
It's true.
So Daco actually did we touched on this a little bit last time we recorded.
Yeah, we talked about some of the behind the scenes mutterings that have been happening, and no one's still clear on exactly why Daco was out of the lineup for the first 2 weeks of stage 2. But he made his way back in for this NYXL game, and he made a huge impact.
He did. He made a huge impact, and it was really great to see him back, obviously, and doing those things. But something that really caught me off guard is we swapped him out for Fried on Anubis, and we still won that map. It, like, a lot of people were saying that Daco was the what we needed to win these games, but I don't want to understate the amount of just teamwork and preparedness that we got. And as important, the reason I said it was so important was to point just that fact out, that it's as awesome as Daco was there, we played as a team, and Daco definitely made a showing when he was there, but maybe it's the competition between the two, but both Fried and Daco were playing insanely well, and I'm very glad to have him back. It was great to see him on stage. He looked happy. Everyone else looked happy, and I'd love to know what happened, but if everyone is good and we can move forward from this, I'm good with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that is kind of my sentiment when it comes down to this. I don't think we're ever going to get a real answer on what happened there unless someone comes through with the leaks. But at this point, it is water under the bridge. It seems like Daco is back with the team. As long as he is there and continues to perform like this, I think everyone will be happy with that situation. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the Fried versus Daco kind of rotation aspect of it. If they keep swapping them in and out, that's kind of an interesting look. And we'll just have to see what direction they want to go.
Hey man, I tried to get some juice, and nobody is leaking right now. But the funny part about this game is so we won in 3. We won handedly in 3, ending on Kings Row, and then went to Rialto, which the first half of Rialto after we had won, you could tell the team was like, whatever, we're good, we beat them, we're good.
Well, yeah, we even had the moment after Kings Row when everybody on the team realized what had just happened. When Baby Bay especially realized, oh crap, we just beat NYXL.
That's right, because we got to a moment on Kings Row where the best that New York could do was tie. Yeah, like the best they could do is tie it up, and a tie means that Atlanta won. So that's a little bit of a complicated situation, and a lot of people didn't realize that. I know Kings Row is still going on, but even a tie means Atlanta wins. And Baby Bay, they released the comment. It's like, wait, we won, and just lost his mind. It was so damn funny.
I love to see it. That I'm quickly becoming kind of enamored with Baby Bay. I really enjoy his personality. He's so boisterous and outgoing with his personality that it's a really fun person to have on the team. So I'm really starting to like his presence.
And it's different from Dogman is similar, that he's very kind of outgoing, and you get to hear his presence, or you feel his presence a lot, but in a very different way. Like it's I don't know. I don't know exactly. Basically, it's fun seeing big personalities, and Baby Bay is kind of sliding in very well to that whole Left by Dufran.
For sure. So that's enough about NYXL, because there was another game in that week for Atlanta.
We'll come back to NYXL in a few minutes.
Well, we will. But after coming down from the high of beating New York and then going into the game against Guangzhou, I never expected the letdown to come, but it came, and it came hard, and it came in the form of Eileen's Doomfist.
Oh God, I mean, no one expected the New York game to go the way it did, but I expected this less with the numbers that I'm even looking at right now. But yeah, the Eileen's Doomfist was, we didn't know what to do. Like you were saying about New York, and like we've discussed before, when it's a slow and steady, when we can fall into a groove and we can play what we know and we know what we're up against, we are nearly unbeatable unless we start making some crazy mistakes. But the second we start going up against compositions that we don't get, we're not used to playing against, things just start to fall apart.
And it does not help, especially in this matchup in particular, that this was the first week that Eileen really leaned into the Doomfist. It's something that people knew he could play and knew he was really good at. But they brought it out in earnest for the first time earlier that week against Hangzhou, and almost got the upset over their fellow Chinese team. And then going into Atlanta, it's like you said, they just didn't seem to know how to deal with it, especially if we look at the Kings Row map, which was on its own one of the most ridiculous maps of Overwatch I have ever seen.
This is what happens when your offense looks great, but both defenses are just utterly lost. Like, so just going over it, the final count on this was 7-8. Guangzhou took King's Row. So that means we were on a third push through the map for both teams by the time this thing ended. And it's you don't see that. You don't see that.
No, it was absolutely bonkers. I mean, the push from Atlanta on their second attack was absolutely insane. They pushed through nearly the entire map in overtime to put their sixth point on the board, and then they got to keep going for another round. But just through the entire map on Guangzhou's attack rounds, they had no answer whatsoever for Eileen. He ripped them to pieces, and it was kind of a little bit of a microcosm of the series as a whole.
Yeah, just when things were going well, when we could play our comps, they started to fall apart to our pressure. But the minute we tried to throw up a defense against something we don't know how to deal with, like that Doomfist, and Eileen is very good on that Doomfist. It was just it was a mess, and we got. Hey, that's something we have to fix if we hope to, that we're coming up on the mid-season break here, and if we want to make a strong showing in the second half, a lot of teams are realizing that they can't necessarily compete in that pure 3-3 with other teams that are better at it, and they need to start kind of looking for little their own style of it at the very least, and Atlanta needs to straighten up, because those custom styles of goats and those weird off picks are kryptonite. It's something that really messes with us
for sure. And it'll be fascinating to see how they deal with that going forward, but it might not necessarily wind up being that much of a factor, at least in terms of talking specifically about goats, because we've got one more game remaining in this stage up against NYXL next week for the second straight game, or not the second straight game, but the second time this stage. But after that, there's a long, pretty much a month-long break until stage 3 starts. So trying to predict what the meta is really going to look like at that point, what changes might come through in terms of balance before then, is going to be really tough. I would be surprised if we are still this heavy into goats in stage 3, but I kind of would have said the same thing going into stage 2. So who really knows at this point?
Yeah, it's one of those things again where even if it's not the best composition, so many teams are so used to and so good at running it that it's still going to be used by a lot of teams.
It'll be a factor.
I would love another thing I've actually heard about both the Reign and ATL Academy actually is that we have very, very good DPS players when they're able to play DPS, and I love seeing it. We got to see during these matches, I can't remember exactly what it was. We got to see Erster come out on the Junkrat on Anubis, which he's insane on the Junkrat. Did we get to see his Genji? Am I remembering that right? Like very briefly. I might be
if we did, I don't remember seeing it. If we
been
did,
a couple weeks.
It was very brief. If it did happen,
I may be thinking of one of the Academy games. There's been a handful of games in the last couple weeks. I apologize, everyone, but yeah, it's I really love seeing especially characters or people like Baby Bay who made their themselves known on people like Soldier and stuff. I want to see more of that, and I hope you're right. I hope we do get to see less and less goats, and I hope we get to see more of that true rock paper scissors that we were talking about earlier.
For sure. But let's move on and talk about this upcoming week. And that, of course, brings us to the rematch with NYXL.
Well, what are your thoughts? I have a feeling we have we might have different thoughts on how this game is going to go.
I think we just might, and I don't want to, dismiss what happened a couple weeks ago, because it was a monumental win for Atlanta. It was huge. It was kind of it was a feather in their cap in what has otherwise been a tough stage for them.
Mm.
But I cannot for the life of me imagine that New York is going to let it happen twice. Maybe Atlanta is just their kryptonite, and they come out again, and Atlanta is on top of it, and they roll them again, and we see a repeat of what we had last time. But at the base of it, I still think on some level New York was kind of overlooking this game, was not fully invested in making sure that they got the win here. And this is something we've seen out of New York time and time again. They have lulls. They let teams take maps off of them that probably shouldn't. They have times where they look a little shaky, even if they get the win. And in this case, it kind of backfired on them.
Yeah. Oh, the sandbag. Okay, so
I don't think it's on purpose. I don't think they're sandbagging. I just think that they, didn't necessarily take Atlanta as seriously as they should have.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's not necessarily sandbagging, but more of just not taking their opponent seriously, which I'm a big proponent of. Definitely, like, take your opponent seriously, respect their talent. Like, everyone is here for the same reason. Everyone is really talented at the game, and on any given day, things can happen. I'm never comfortable. I mean, we lost to the number. We gave the Valiant their first win, and then we beat New York. There's nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible. Yeah, exactly.
Here. But as you know, my predictions on games like this tend to fall into a category I like to call reckless optimism. But I would like to actually throw a little bit of logic into the mix here. So yes, I went into that game predicting that Atlanta would win out of sheer optimism. But after watching them perform, and after what we discussed here, New York, while they probably were not as well prepared for this game as they should have been, they are still a team that I've said this season is riding their individual talent, and they're still just performing very, very well and very, very consistently, but they haven't grown as much as other teams. Like, their skill floor is starting to get caught up to by other teams. And they're consistent in how they play, but the way they play is passive and defensively. And that's something Atlanta figured out. That's something that Atlanta knows how to play against. If New York had these crazy off meta comps, or these other comps that they just didn't flex into, but they would feel really comfortable in, I'd be a lot more worried. And I'm not saying I'm not worried, but Atlanta proved that I don't think it was a fluke. I think that they identified that slow, passive style of play. And I don't know if New York, while they might tighten up a little bit, I don't know if they can completely change their play style to, being super aggressive or anything like that. It will obviously rely on where Atlanta's at. We are still a very emotional team, and a lot of those map wins were based off of big picks. Dogman really performing well and finding kills that turn points. But as far as if both teams can come playing their game and playing well, I don't think it was a fluke. I don't think my optimism is as reckless this week. I think it has to do with, like you said, Atlanta might be New York's kryptonite. They might be the Houston Outlaws to season 1's London Spitfire. That great team that just couldn't figure out how to beat the Outlaws, And I think that might be it. I don't think this was a fluke, and I do think Atlanta is going to pull this out again. I don't think it will be as hard of a victory. I don't think they will decisively beat New York like they did last time, but I think Atlanta pulls this out.
And unlike a couple of weeks ago, where, if I'm being honest, I didn't really see something like that happening. This week, for me, it's totally in the realm of possibility. Atlanta, definitely show that they can perform and go toe to toe with top teams. Given the right matchup, and this seems like it just might be the right matchup for them. So I do think it's a close series, no matter how it goes. I don't think, even if NYXL come into this and they want their revenge, I don't see them kind of just blowing Atlanta out of the water or anything. But I am still not ready to predict that the team that has lost one game all season, even if it was to Atlanta, I'm still not ready to predict them losing again here.
I don't think anyone is going to fault you for that. I will point out that Halo of Thoughts, one of the people who does I guess analysts and does journalism about OWL, actually has said today that he agreed with me that he doesn't think it's a fluke. So it's not just me and my crazy optimism. There are other people out there who actually see this going the way of Atlanta. But this was definitely not a fluke. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. How do you think it's going to go? What's the numbers?
In my mind, this one's going to be a 3-2 for New York. I think we were very close to this situation perhaps playing out last time. I think the one map that I can kind of point to and say kind of might have been a little bit of a fluke against New York was winning Busan off of the back of those Daco picks. I don't know how reliable those can be, although, I mean, he's been great at doing that. But, if he doesn't kill Jonak while Jonak has Transcendence going into the final fight, then who knows how that map turns around. If that map flips the other way, we're staring down the barrel of a Game 5, and I don't necessarily love our chances there. So that's where I'm going to call it this week. I think it's incredibly close and could really go either way. But New York is a veteran team, and in my mind, definitely the more talented squad here.
That's fair. I because I think Atlanta is going to win, I am actually going to shy away from that the 3-2 pick, because I think you're right. I don't think a map 5 is where we need to find ourselves. That is not as an emotional team. That map 5, I can only imagine, is just terrible on your nerves. So I'm going to say a 3-1. I'm going to say it's going to be another 3-1, but not the way that the last one went. This is going to be decided at the end of map 4, whether or not this is going to map 5 or not. And I think it's going to be Atlanta. I think it's going to again be off of some of those hero plays where it's hard to rely on those, but Dogman, I don't know, man. He has this tendency to, in a lot of the heat of the moment, if he's feeling it, he can find those picks. And if we can, if New York is still playing passively, and we can really get in there and shake them up, I think that's kind of his place in this composition going up against New York. Is we're going to go in, we're going to hit strong, and when they start to scatter, find someone and click their head.
Yeah, it's a strategy that worked well last time. So in my mind, there is a very real possibility of it happening again. We'll just have to see. It would be incredible for Atlanta to come out of stage 2 with a 3-4 record and 2 wins against NYXL. It would just be kind of picture perfect for how roller coaster this stage has been for them. But they are finally, they're finding their footing a little bit here towards the end. And that makes me hopeful going forward, no matter how this game turns out. But a win here would be a nice way to finish off like the halfway point of the season.
Yeah, and I really think we need it. Looking at, I think one of the biggest things to me, just at a glance, looking at the stage standings, is the teams surrounding Atlanta at the back end of the standings. They don't look like the group that Atlanta should be in. I've seen a lot more talent from this team. I'm hoping that a lot of this stage 2 turmoil has been due to Daco issues, which I hope are behind us, and integration of new players, which I don't really see any of our players leaving anytime soon. DeFran, that was always kind of a little bit of a question mark But I think, Baby Bay's getting playtime. I don't think he's going anywhere. We just picked him up. And yeah, I think we look solid. I think we look a lot better than where we find ourselves on this. Regardless as to whether or not we end up winning this game or not, we really need to come back in the second half of the season, because we're definitely one of those teams. I think us and Paris are those teams that looked really, really good for a time in stage one and have had some major struggles coming into stage two for sure. And I really want to see us go back to where I know we can be, because watching us against New York, we have the skill, we have the talent. It's just we need to get over those emotions and be able to communicate and work as a team. And I really think we can find ourselves back at the top.
I'm right there with you, bud, and hopefully stage 3 will bring some of that. But that, I think, is gonna do it for us here this week. It's good to be back after a week off. The team had a week off as well, so maybe they'll come in ready and raring to go against New York, and surprise me at least. Won't surprise Norcetto. That is impossible at this point.
Reckless optimism. Try it out. It's great.
All right, have a good week, everybody, and we'll be back next week to wrap up stage 2 and hopefully discuss another win against New York.
Yeah, give some stage 1 and 2 retrospectives, and talk about how awesome that second win. But yeah, until then, let it rain.
I want to play you another one.
Really? Yes. Really? Yes. Yes. Yes.
I want to play you another recording.
Really?